Hello and welcome to this video, which is part 2 of the series of videos, and today we'll talk about writing style. If you haven't seen the first video, please do so and come back to this video so that you're following it in the logical order, which is what we're going to talk about today. So the first thing I want to start talking about is really the writing goal, and the writing goal will dictate what we're going to cover in this video. So my number one goal of writing is to ensure that you're communicating a message clearly to the reader, and within that we'll talk about things like simple and clear language. We'll talk about avoiding lengthy sentence and complex structures and avoiding big words or ambiguous kind of terms or words. And that really contributes to that clarity. We're not trying to puzzle the reader, and we're trying to make it easy for them to comprehend and get the idea that you're trying to pass on. The second goal is really to persuade the reader, and that's by using, precise, logical, factual words, to the point, avoiding any bias without evidence, and that's quite common, and you really want to avoid that, but we'll go into those in some detail. The first part of the video will focus on the first goal. The second will obviously focus on the second part. So the first thing I'd like to show you is a long sentence structure is really not helpful. The brain doesn't like long sentences, and it's hard to follow the logic in there. So we're trying to make it short and to the point, because that helps with passing that message on, and it helps with that clarity. So what you want to do is you want to avoid wordiness. So any word that's not functional, that's not really doing anything, cut it out. Conciseness is really a mark of good writing, and it does contribute to clarity. I've got two examples here where they're both saying the same thing, but one is wordy and one is tight, and you can see the difference. And that's what you want to aim for. Tight is definitely your goal. So don't add words that are not functional. Use concise words. Redundant words, get rid of them. An example is it says advanced plan. Well, don't add the word advanced. It's redundant. Or actual experience. Actual is redundant. Uniformly homogeneous. Uniformly is redundant. The word uniformly, etc. So use also verbs to carry weight. So instead of saying, make an adjustment, just say adjust, or perform an analysis, just say analyze. And usually that's a shorter way and more concise to demonstrate the idea. Paragraph structure as well is important, because I expect a certain structure as I'm reading, and you want to start the paragraph by basically talking about the topic, or what kind of forecasting what that paragraph will be about. So there's this topic sentence that basically states the main idea within the sentence, within the paragraph. Then you move on to the middle section of the paragraph, which really talks about a unified idea, and that's the key word here, unified. You want to make sure that each paragraph talks about one thing and one idea. Otherwise, it becomes a bit too difficult, and it doesn't really contribute to clarity. So it is a mark of good writing to have each paragraph discuss one idea. And it also helps the reader remember the points. The end is important, and we talked about that in the first video, where it needs to conclude with some sort of an outcome. The concluding sentence is your opportunity to also provide an analysis as the author. So, make use of that chance. Make sure that you don't use big words. They're only good if you're trying to demonstrate technical expertise or showing formality, but be careful, because it does kind of push you away and distance you from the reader. So you need to be very careful when using them. You also want to make sure that you're using the correct terminology. So definitely within your discipline or within your field, use the correct terminology, and make sure that it is consistent. I've got an example here of a little bit of a paragraph that is kind of an abstract, and I'm talking about UAVs or drones. But you can see that I've called them UAVs, I've called them drones, I've called them uncrewed aerial vehicles. They're all talking about the same thing, but it's not unified and it's not consistent. So what happens is the person reading this is not going to think, oh wow, he knows all the acronyms for the same thing. He or she is going to think, oh, is he talking about different things? Are these all not the same? And it just confuses things. And this is one of the very most common mistakes that I found students typically do. And also try and avoid ambiguous words or words that have dual meaning. So for example, the word duck can mean the animal, that's duck, or the verb, that's, duck. So, it can give two meanings, and you want to avoid those. And also with respect to connotations, avoid them, because they're kind of the emotional meaning attached to the phrase or the sentence. So, if you say Jack was blue when his bike got stolen, What does blue mean? We know it means that he was scared, right? But within a scientific context, that, the reader will go, wait, hold on a second, red blood cells went blue? Well, do you know what I mean? Like, so don't use the emotional meaning or connotations. Use denotations, which is the literal meaning of the word. And avoid colloquials. They're kind of the slang version of things like, turn up, or, turn up the volume. What does turn up mean? Turn up is kind of a slang for increase, right? So that concludes the first goal. Let's talk about the second goal, which is being persuasive. And you want to make sure that to do so, you're being precise. You want to avoid vague or subjective terms. If I was to say there are many tall humans, then that's not really, precise. You want to define what tall means. Does that mean more than 1 meter high, or what does that mean? And when I say many, which is quite common, what does many mean? How many is many? So is it, say 2% of the population? Is that many, or is that 3%, etc.? You also want to try and ensure that you've got logical flow in your arguments and tell a continuous story without any discontinuities. And bear in mind that I can pick those up. So I'm reading and you're discussing an idea, and then all of a sudden there's a bit of discontinuity, and you sense the gap, and it doesn't demonstrate good writing. So you want to avoid those and kind of have a continuous, seamless story. And you basically ensure that you've got logical arguments presented in a kind of well-ordered way, especially with regards to ideas. And the way to check for that is, if I was to read this from the very first time, I immediately get the meaning. On that point, with logical flow, we can talk also about transitions, which are quite important, and they can happen on a sentence level or even paragraph level. Sentence level, you want to make sure that each sentence transitions nicely into the next sentence. And also within, a paragraph and a paragraph, the last sentence of a paragraph should link to the first sentence of the next paragraph, and it should flow nicely across, and that should be quite clear and obvious. Another thing is to also be factual, and this is something I see all the time. It's basically being biased without demonstrating any evidence, and you always need to put a reference in there. Again, in the scientific community, things may not be as black and white. They can have levels of gray in there, and you need to show that if you're taking a bias, you need to have a reference. And sometimes you might think you're saying something that's obvious, but you need a reference. Anything that's not you doing the work, then you kind of need a reference for it. Otherwise, it's kind of, as a reader, I'm thinking that you're the one that's making that conclusion. And I start asking questions like, on what basis and how did he come up with that statement, and so forth. So statements without references is a no-no. So make sure you have references. And I usually, when I go through, that's kind of one of the things I look for as well. Whether I'm peer reviewing for others, or as a journal paper reviewer, or just for my students. Overall, if you ask me, how do I improve my writing? My advice would be read a lot. You'll pick up these styles, and you'll pick up these techniques as you read a lot. And most importantly is to implement by writing, and then rewriting, and then proofing and rereading and rewriting. That's really you're not born natural writer, but you essentially pick up the skill as you go. And really, to get to that point where you can write a paper over a weekend, you really just have to get that experience and just that level of skill with the language. Thank you for watching this video. Stay tuned for the next video. Don't forget to subscribe and like the video if you enjoyed it, and I'll see you in the next video. Thank you. Take care.